The Monterey Bay Poetry Consortium presents Charles Atkinson and J.P. Dancing Bear, recorded live via Zoom on Sunday, December 13th, 2020 at 2 p.m.
Well, welcome to the 9th Monterey Bay Poetry Consortium Zoom-based reading in our series, our monthly reading series. It's hard to imagine that we've been doing this for 9 months, but then again, when we think on when this pandemic began, that fits. We are recording these, and this is our final reading for the year. It's been an amazing year in many, many ways, but in terms of the poetry that we've enjoyed over these past 9 months, it's been really, really special. And we're doing this today as we recover from the stress and the strain of election aftermath, pandemic, preparing for the lockdown that begins tonight here in Monterey County, and I believe it's up in Santa Cruz County, and it's in also the greater Bay Area, as we brace ourselves for the coming days of lockdown between now and January, mid-January. And then, of course, as we brace ourselves through the transition that's going on in our government, culminating with January 20th. And we're doing all this, as I mentioned, we're enjoying for the first time in a while some rain here in Northern California, and we're forecast to have some more today and some more this coming week. For those of you who don't know us, the Monterey Bay Poetry Consortium is an affiliation of poets in the Monterey Bay area and has been carrying on readings for many, many years, keeping alive a tradition that was established by the National Writers Union, local, that was here in the Monterey Bay area. And we are on Facebook at Monterey Bay Poetry Consortium. Please feel free to join that Facebook page. Doesn't require anything, just a request. And that's a good place for receiving notices of upcoming events. It's also a good place for finding out when we've got the YouTube recording of today's reading up, and there will be also posted the link. And as I mentioned, we do have our own YouTube channel now, and all the recordings that we've been making in these past 9 months are there. The dean and the driving force behind our consortium is John Lowy, who has been involved with the poetry scene here in the Monterey Bay area for a long, long time, and was in fact the National Writers Union representative many, many years ago. And John is with us today, and it's great to see him. Thank you for being here, everyone, virtually. I know it's not easy sometimes to deal with the technology of it. And I'd like to just ask you to attend to a few housekeeping items with me on Zoom. Please mute your microphones during the readings. And that way we won't have any stray sounds coming in when our poets are reading. And if you want to experience the reading fully, click on Speaker View, which is in the upper right-hand corner of your screen. And during the reading, as I said, I will take a few screenshots and then we'll post them on the consortium's Facebook page. And as I mentioned, we will be recording what we're doing here today. Today, we are really fortunate to be able to enjoy poetry from two outstanding local poets, Charles Atkinson and J.P. Dancing Bear. Each poet will present for about 20 to 25 minutes. And I will introduce each of them just before they read. It's going to be a wonderful afternoon, continuing a great tradition that we have of our readings. And so I'd invite you to sit back. If you have a cup of coffee, enjoy it, a glass of wine, whatever, and a snack, and just take in what's going to be a wonderful afternoon. Now, our first poet is Charles Atkinson. He has published 3 full-length poetry collections, 4 prize-winning chapbooks, and a number of individual poetry competitions. I've seen his work over the course of 30 years. Chuck Atkinson, Charles Atkinson, is a now retired instructor from UCSC, where he also earned his PhD. And he is a outstanding member of the Santa Cruz poetry community.
I'm listening to it.
He lives with his wife, Sarah Rabkin, who's with us also, going to be actually part of the reading a little bit. There she is. And Chuck and Sarah live in Soquel. So Chuck, over to you.
Thank you, Bob. What a generous introduction. And thanks for all the footwork that goes on behind the scenes. And to John for starting this whole insurrection to begin with. Jennifer, whom I have not met, but has made this meeting possible. I'm going to share with you maybe 8 poems or so tonight, maybe a few more, see how it goes. I will say that they're all new poems in the sense that they haven't been published. None of them have been written or published since the last couple of books that came out a few years ago. So this is their first.
Things in my ears.
Yeah, where were we? Oh, yes.
Their first outing.
This is their first outing, so I want to see how they sound when they're actually spoken and in the air. I noticed that all the poets that I know seem to have written their pandemic poem, or at least one so far, and I thought that's a noble thing to do and a good thing to do. So I set myself little goals, like to get one stanza written a month, and I got through 5 months, and it was so depressing that I didn't want to continue it anymore. So this is a sort of beginning poem that hasn't yet found its tail. Let's see what happens with it. Postcards from a pandemic year. March, shelter in place. We're men. We carp about the lost season, how to kill wood rats, the oak moth's half-life. How do we feel about 250,000 human deaths? By kill from a fool's gamble? Or feel about the one death sidling this way? Are we invited barside to swill the bitter liquor, infect the one we treasure the most? April, social distancing. Hear the wheeze behind a face shield. Hacking doesn't clear a darkened lung. Do we breach the 6-foot moat between us? Thousands already claimed on the sun-soaked coasts, clutching a comfort lie. Let it come. It'll go. Give us back our beach. May. Poetry. A common dream. A long-time love calls out. Read aloud from the Asian hermits, Basho, Lipo, Lao Tzu. Between good and evil, how much difference is there? Can a poem fend off fever? Can a chant ease the heart? Months confined to a room or two and groceries. June, music, opera, death's eloquent consort. Can we bear a great aria? Mid-phrase, we crater into sobs. So much we've done wrong, so much still unsaid. Can we surrender to whatever sings? July, prayer. Midway up Mount Talek, the mind stalls, pumice stone, dark red, football-sized, coarse and porous. One step up, slip half a step back. Listen for slides and sunning rattlers, even the peaks unstable. Pick a single stone, hear it tumble to the shore of Fallen Leaf Lake. One day the plague will be spent. One day the mountain will be flat. Sarah and I had the pleasure and benefit of residency at the North Cascades Institute in the newly formed North Cascades National Park, I think, yes. And I, for one, was just stunned by the landscape, the power of it. It's just an up and down country there. There's nothing much flat, and a lot of it's rock above timberline. And I felt acutely the smallness of human life in this huge, what Sarah, my wife, calls the more than human world. So I'm going to share with you 3 or 4 poems that came out of that time and came out of that landscape. It has a title to it that sounds more like an epigraph, but this title is actually from one of the park rangers. She said, "If there's a God, she owns these peaks." That's E.H. Park Ranger, North Cascades National Park. Morning sheen on Lake Diablo, already roughed up. Still feels good to grip a paddle, 20 minutes downwind. First, you ask? Anvil clouds slide and shroud the peak's background, mutter high on a granite cliff. Spark chain chatters downslope, loose hair stands up. Bow rudder spins us into the wind. No more warm-up, paddle play. Let's go. J strokes keep the bow to windward. First rain spits on shoulders, flash and clap. Scorched air, fat drops, thicken, pock the lake. Carpet of silver rings like gunfire. Every stroke a dig into whitecaps. Muscles of the back on fire. Inhale. Dock an hour away from here. Arms shake. One stroke ahead of revelation. This is a 2-part poem called Exposure. 1. Diablo to Ross Lake. It's not the steep climb out of the glade and its Lansing Devil's Club leaves. Not the sudden face-to-ass with a bear shitting blackberries on the trail. It bolts. It's not the scrabble over mossy talus, half-step to each big stone, listening for the hollow clock that can crush an ankle. Not even the cliffside trail 100 yards above the lake, where a slip can trigger a rock slide till you hit glacial water. Why do some of us shrink at the edge of a sudden gulf? Something primal tugs at a cuff, judders the rocks. Come closer, closer, you know you can. 2. On Cutthroat Creek. Snowmelt booms off scoured stones, nowhere to ford upstream. A fir tree's been felled across it, one straight spar a foot thick spans the banks, 20 feet above the rocks. The bark's stripped off, a light rain soaks it. The log, watch the log. A few guarded steps out and the bank drops from view. Nothing below but boulders and ice. No turning back. Both feet slow to a shuffle, won't let either one lift for the next shiny step. The whole body's frozen, breath slight and shallow, boots scraping along as if testing thin ice, smooth stones below. The bank inches closer. Fear retreats to the belly, coils for the next mutiny, the return crossing. On one of those trips and hikes, I jot down some notes that have turned into a dialogue that I thought this would be nice to actually hear it out loud. So I'm going to ask my dear partner and love, Sarah, to become my what do you call it?
Interlocutor?
Interlocutor. I like that word. That's a big one. Yeah. So this is it's called Hiker's Antiphony, and that's sort of the opposite of symphony, I think. So, Hiker's Antiphony. Knees hurt, back to
Ibuprofen?
aging.
How you feel about that?
It's unpleasant.
That's a judgment.
It's a fact
Just a string of thoughts.
that leads to unhappiness.
What can you do about that?
Shut up and walk.
Each mile gets you closer.
Wears the knees down.
Everyone's aging.
That's the lake? Tiny.
Can you make it that far?
Do I have a choice?
You always do.
Just a string of thoughts.
See, you made it.
Yow! Cold, it's slippery.
Wade in. The knees.
Already numb.
So dive. Ice your mind.
Hike back.
With me?
That's a first ever. Thank you.
Okay, I'm out of here.
Okay. I want to share a two-part poem called Spinal Fracture Therapy. And it's true. Two parts. When I was a small god in my world, I'd choose water, thumb, poison. This one's at the bottom of a sink, too steep to scale. A thumbnail spider. Over and over, she inches partway up to her shining porcelain jail. 8 eyes glaring, slips to the bottom, starts again. Has it been all night? Now I come with drinking glass to cover and calm her startled jumps, and a clean dough blade to slide between the sink wall and her frantic feet. Walk her onto the deck for a shakeout. She splays her delicate legs, sails 2 stories down, a tiny parachute, filament anchored to my glass. I'm no spider, and less a healer. Falls have shattered my bones, but while I usher out a creature that wants only freedom, I'm free of pain. Two, she's back, the spider in the sink, or one that looks the same, here to hunt another day. Should I be cautious, call an arachnologist? Nothing learned from yesterday's drop? I didn't herd spiders most of my life. Swept or crushed them, no second thought. But how does this spider choose to spin anchors 7 times the strength of her web? Certain ones sticky. I'd be a steward of that. To a spider, rescue must feel like the horrors of wildfire. Rushing wind, nowhere to hide, birds that know spiders as lunch. All this care, and I've broken a leg that drags behind, a flag of distress. Isn't that the course of pity? Someone's hurt is our own, until we want to make it go away. Then we intervene and make it worse, playing God again. This poem has an epigraph which I'm going to read a couple times because it's so dense. Heavy is the root of light. Still is the master of moving. And it's from the Tao Te Ching, chapter 26, rendered by Ursula Le Guin. Title of the poem is Flux, and I'll give you the epigraph again. Heavy is the root of light. Still is the master of moving. They changed the trunk on a rusted truck, grinding over the pass by now. But not before I counted the rings that wept in the new sun sliver. 260 plus. Not old for a red fur shielded by law, somewhere. 150 feet of shimmer green, upright cones waiting to be lit, as if it were a Christmas shrine, or fire hazard, or blowdown risk. I'm in the pit of a charcoal mood when something hums at the edge of vision. A hoverfly stalks still in the light pool, flaunting for a nearby mate. Compound eyes scan the clearing, his forest in flux. A great firs drop, wings that blur, 300 beats a second, forward or back, defying the laws of physics, going nowhere. And a stump that reaches down and up. How are we doing here?
You're doing fine, Chuck.
Okay. Yeah, this poem grew out of a passion, actually, for discovering Beethoven's Seventh Symphony, the second movement, which is just, as those of you who may know more than I, seems to me saturated in grief. And I just decided I had to say something back to that piece. So I thought words is what I can try. It's interesting footnote that Beethoven himself dedicated the movement to the wounded returning defeated in the battles against Napoleon. Soles of your boots scrape home toward the graveyard. Turnips and cabbage stolen from fields. One keening oboe, road lined with corpses. Search for some movement. Guts in a coil. Grieving viola. Sword arm in battle. Severed at shoulder. Someone's brief joy. String bass in mourning. Vibrates the sternum. Seeing your last autumn. Lie down in mud. Trumpets and announcements. Gaze blind to feel it. Sun burns through ground fog. No one will prod. Let comrades raise you. Loved ones still searching. Headstones are waiting, bodies and dreams. Crows in the bare oaks swoop down to watch you. Cello broods over, war's maw is mine. Flute cries above you, martial cadenza, lights on a shoulder. Did you live well? Woodwinds are asking, can we endure this? Shelter the youngest, all breath will fade. Now, in a whisper, may earth abide. I'm going to leave you with a totally different poem from the one you just heard. This is thanks to a very curious 4-year-old named Eloise. And this is pretty much a recorded word-for-word quote by Eloise from her polka dot car seat. The title is, "What shape is a kiss?" I think, Mama, a kiss is a little bit tinier than a bacteria. If we look at a kiss under a 14,000, 100,000 strong of a microscope, I wonder what we'll see. A little ball or something? A fuzzy ball or a spiky ball? I want to be a scientist when I grow up. Or now. I want to be a scientist now. When I'm 4, I want to be a halfway taught one, and a medium taught one when I'm 5, and when I'm 6-year-old, full taught. Can you help me learn some stuff now, actually? And I so often feel like that. Can I learn something now? Thank you for being a great audience and listening so carefully, for being there and making it happen.
Thank you, Chuck. It's wonderful. Thank you for what you shared with us. Yeah, would that we could learn some stuff and be on the top right now. It was a 4-year-old's wisdom and beautiful. I love your response to Beethoven's Seventh Symphony, the second movement, when you concluded with "Now in a whisper, may earth abide," and after the carnage that he's addressing with his symphony, that's a benediction in a way. And, thank you for that. Thank you to Sarah for being with you here. I would guess there were 2 things that I would note before we move on is in the dialogue, you asked the question, do I have a choice? The response was, you always do. And that fits with, I think, what you said earlier in an earlier poem, come closer, closer, you know you can. And I think we can. We can make the choices and we can come closer. And thank you for taking us there today. Really appreciate it.
My pleasure.
Now, thank you. Okay, folks, now continuing this wonderful afternoon, we're going to hear from J.P. Dancing Bear, who is the editor of Verse Daily. He's the author of 16 collections of poetry, most recently of Oracles and Monsters, which came out this year, and Fish Singing Foxes, which came out last year. JP's work has appeared in, or will shortly appear in, American Literary Review, Crazyhorse, Shenandoah, to name a few publications, and elsewhere. And so, folks, just continue to lean back and enjoy a wonderful afternoon. JP, over to you.
Okay. First, I want to say hi to Chuck. It's been a while. So good to be on with you. And I'm a big fan of Beethoven, always have been ever since I think the first time I ever heard him. And I seem to remember, and I could be wrong, but didn't Worlds at War used to use that music, that particular piece, all the time when they were showing like the devastation and destruction in Europe?
I don't know, but I think I know that. No, I don't know. And
I always think of Trockle, which is World War I, but pretty much the same effect, I think. So anyways, usually when I start off a reading, I like to pay tribute to somebody who's been an influence, either recent or in this case, it's going to be from the beginning. Today is actually James Wright's birthday. So he's the guy who basically really made poetry work for me on a whole new level. So I thought I would share one of my ultimate favorites of his, which is this poem. As I step over a puddle at the end of winter, I think of an ancient Chinese governor. And it has an epigraph, which is, and how can I, born in evil days and fresh from failure, ask a kindness of fate? This was written in AD 819, but I think it's very relative today. And the poem goes, Po Chu-yi, balding old politician, what's the use? I think of you uneasily entering the gorges of the Yangtze. When you were being towed up the rapids towards some political job or other in the city of Changshui. You made it, I guess, by dark. But it is 1960. It is almost spring again. And the tall rocks of Minneapolis build me my own black twilight of bamboo, ropes, and waters. Where is Yuan Shen, the friend you loved? Where is the sea that once solved the whole loneliness of the Midwest? Where is the Minneapolis? I can see nothing but the great, terrible oak tree darkening with winter. Did you find the city of isolated men beyond mountains? Or have you been holding the end of a frayed rope for 1,000 years? And I finally, after, I used to have that poem pinned on my wall. I read that poem probably thousands of times. It just totally nailed me for decades. And so I finally, this year, wrote a response to it, borrowing the second line, which is, what's the use? Lately, I've forgotten seasons. It always seems to be infrastructure week. All the synapses like bridges, rusted, creaking. The water, they span much colder than memory. Like winter, our old politicians just slowed down while on a path between legislations, between the last red leaves, so much decay. In the distance, the capital of the empire slowly breaking back into sand. Those people forgot every foundation, every glory, returning to their tyrannies. History, a delicate imprint of a dead leaf in the mud of a wet season. I no longer know which one. So there. I've never read that before. It's the first time I'm breaking it out. And I've got, as you had mentioned at the beginning, I do have two relatively new books that are out. One last year and one this year. And actually, if I'm being honest, it's 3 books, because one of these books is actually 2 books that was combined into one. So I'm going to read some work from those. I'm going to start with the one from last year, which is Fish Singing Foxes, which came out from Salmon Poetry. And in this book, half of the book is Gazella, or Gazelli, which are ghazals that were written by, in essence, this is my response and my love affair and my just take on Federico Garcia Lorca and the Tamarack poems. And so I did write a response to one of his, and I'm going to start with that, which is the Gazella of Unwanted Love, after Federico Garcia Lorca. I never wanted you to understand anything about me. Last of all, my scent. I never wanted power over you. I never wanted you to think my love was cruel. You spent too much time daydreaming about what it was I thought or looked like underneath the thickest scarves and skirts. In what dark earth you would lie down. I kept you outside in the summer of rain, waiting for me to look upon your wet branches. But I wanted no word from your lips, nothing that would make you more than a shadow, a shadow, a shadow in a garden, waiting, patient as a magnolia. Your mouth muted and open as a bloom, white as death's shroud, your mouth open. And these poems are a series of poems that use a lot of repetition and refrain, but not necessarily in a metrical rhyming sense, which I think holds true to some of the takes on ghazals and the way they've kind of evolved over the centuries. This one is Gazella of Unforgotten Love, which again is another response poem to Federico Garcia Lorca. If anyone asks, did you ever love? Say that a moth was born from leaves and landed on your tongue like fingers plucking the harp strings. And though it was not pronounced, you knew that an angelic form had come with dusty wings. It delivered words that you did not know could be spoken. And then say, the coyote yelped from under the straw moon and added something that the light had missed, a meaning deeper than what we normally allow ourselves, something humming and alive in the weeds, hungrier than our beliefs, our beliefs. You might sing this next part as if with a harp music, that you had remembered the voice of water, that you know the forest can chorus your feelings, that everything comes together with a music that has always been there, even if you cannot ever recall hearing it before. Yes, that the owl's voice rises up joyously to join in the symphony you have only now realized. Remember to mention prayer, how you woke up hungry and a prayer on your tongue, on one that had been hiding there most of your life, a rationalized myth, a fairy tale outgrown, fondly kept on the nightstand of hope and kindness, next to the angel feathers and the candles of saints. Did you ever love? Open your mouth with its moth dust and whisper back how you had crawled the longest night, half-mooned, a howling around your ears, blind with fear, weeping, following the slightest touch of water. Back into the wilderness, hungry and in need, to what had always beckoned in the dark, that thrumming harp, winged and reflecting all light. I'm going to see, let's see, I'll move over to the other side. And the other side of this, or the other half of this book, the first half, is my attempt at a weird sort of form. I guess that's one way of looking at this, which is that I took the lines of contemporaries' poems, but never the opening line or the last line, because those are too easy. And so I took a line from the middle of their poems and made it the opening line of one of mine, and didn't bother to try to, keep the logic or the sentiment that they had originally started, but just to allow it to just go and be whatever it wanted to be, a single line. So I'll read this one, Dreaded Wrong, a poem starting with a line from Dara Weir. Much of the breathing we half dreaded had materialized. As ripples across our unmade bed, we were constantly setting sail. We were seasick and unsure of our paper boat, but we believed in the trade winds and said our prayers to the promises the other had made, the unfickle gods, the ones you can depend on. What we dreaded were the mythic monsters that waited at the flat end of the earth, mouths opened and swallowing all who followed the fickle or ill wind or blood sacrifices to petty deities. We followed ourselves and inked maps so we would find our way back along the jagged coasts. If I tell you what we dreaded most, I would tell you first that we dreaded wrong. All our fears were about trusting the other too much, when that is the wind that filled our sails. And I'll read one more from here, which starts with a line from Ilya Kaminsky. This is The Liberators. Yes, my life as a broken branch in the wind. Whistles a tune known only in the stubble fields. It was March, and all I could think of was the history of marches. Too many soldiers were going to die, saving me from my freedoms. In that dream of promises and land, you were struggling to breathe enough to scream. I felt naked with the mechanized hum of Humvees all around me. God, my anger with Ares made me want to explode like a shell in the garden. I didn't care for his childlike mannerisms. We needed someone who could talk to other men, who knew why a tracer bullet burns in the retina long after the target is dead. But it was March. We would soon march. I want to be grafted to a tree where people say a prayer from the last war each night. For all the children in the minefields, blossoming for someone else's flame. And I actually wrote that during the Bush administration, but still very. And then this book that came out this year is what I've basically lived through for the last 4 years. So what we've all lived through. So I'll start with the basic fear that I had from the get-go, which was that I had met a Chinese dissident poet some years ago, and he shared in great detail what it used to be like to live in China and be a political prisoner. He was one of the members that was in Tiananmen Square. He ran several underground literary magazines, and he was used to basically being just, for lack of a better word, mind-fucked on a regular basis by the police state. And so he would be called in the middle of the night. They would ransack his place. They'd steal his notebooks, oftentimes never returning them. And it was all with the idea of just total intimidation all the time. He never knew if he was ever going home, because that was the last time he was picked up. So that was my basic fear at the beginning of this whole process. Oracle of Plutonian. Beneath the tangle of pomegranate branches, trying to reach the moon, I drifted into the valleys of sleep, near the dead and near dead, and came to rest beside a small pond. It's been more than a year that I've been ill, since the first night of visions, the night the writers were labeled enemies of the state, and I remembered words of friends from totalitarian regimes who told me American poets were soft. They'd never been raided at 3 a.m., taken to a dank cell, and beaten to confess whatever was in need of confession. Too easy to be an American writer, and they all hoped it would stay that way now that they were granted asylum here. And I thought about my friends with black sacks on their heads, cuffed and tossed into vans. They told me about never knowing who you'll see or when ever again, and how all your notebooks and journals will be gone to be used as evidence of a criminal thought. And you will hear each friend say, now you will write any way you can. You will write in your head, on the walls, in dirt, even sand if you must. You will write yet one word out. Wake the sleeping people. Write their anthem. This poem is titled Dear Jeff, and it was obviously to the first AG we had, and this was about the kids in cages. I'm just gonna say it, and I'm gonna try to sugarcoat it. Dear Jeff, when you smile your Loki smile, I see them, you know, all those broken children in your cages, people whose ancestors came down through this land following the migratory animal spirits, while your ancestors were a world away. In that grimacing grin of yours, Jeff, the untreated, pox-ridden children are weeping, and you wear your bloody executioner's mask, harvesting the asylum seekers, people so scared of their deaths in their own countries that your torture is still a better choice. What is it about the poor and powerless that makes you smile like that? A death's head grin. Do you watch as they suffer? Are you watching now? When you lie on TV, do you see the dying? When you see your coyote into Congress and claim you can't recall, are you repaying the dust-choked, or are you replaying the dust-choked children who are crying for their mothers? Jeff, tell me what the pharaohs sounded like when they laughed in that Bible of yours, or what tone the devil took with Jesus in the desert. People always assign too much gravitas to the fallen angel's voice, where I imagine your voice, a bit ephemeral and effeminate, insisting within that good book of yours, that cruelty you inflict on the innocent is something Christ would do. Jeff, tonight, thousands of people are wailing in your cages, while the guards threaten and menace in your name, in my name, in the name of America I wish you'd never been born in. And how am I doing on time?
You're doing great, JP.
Okay. So I think I'm going to do one more. And this will be this will be the Oracle of Tender Shelters. That was the term I was thinking of when that's the term they coined for these kids in cages. Here is where humanity hums loudest, like an engine of discontent, no matter how much effort is made to bury this place, to make it hide. Here, each voice is a siren calling out across the world to mothers, mothers and their instinctive hearts, mothers of the borderless regions of emotion, mothers who are sirens themselves, mothers hear every note of music and are boundless in their actions. They are proud of whom they are. They are citizens in a nation that expands with every birth. They are an anthem playing out in every child. They hear the voice of nature, the endless voice of the universe in every baby, hidden or known. They look at the tiny borders of men cutting the land, separating, dividing, their little hands trying to control, dominate, drown out, choke the bonds of family. They love to hate love. These men love to hate women and their children. These small men who have forgotten their own childhood. These men who have forgotten mothers. And thank you very much.
Thank you, JP. That was wonderful. Just wonderful. There's a tenderness in all of these, and these poems to me, by and large, stirred within me a prayer of hope, a prayer that, to use your line, that I would fondly keep on the nightstand of hope. That's my response that helps me to abide and move on through what oracles and monsters have been doing and speaking over this past year. So thank you. Thank you so much for sharing. It's just wonderful.
Thank you.
You're welcome. It's been a great afternoon. Thank you all so very much. We've had quite a year. This has been a remarkable year of very fine poetry, capped by Chuck and JP today. We've done it all, for the most part, virtually through the miracle of technology. And it's keeping us connected. It's drawn in today people from New York, Massachusetts, and Vermont, as well as here in California, which is more than we would otherwise have been able to do. So I want to thank you all very much for being with us. Want to remind you that we do this once a month. John Lowy has set up a wonderful schedule for us, and our next reading will be on Sunday, January 10th, 2021. It will be our 10th reading. Gabriela Gutierrez and Heidi McGurran will be our two poets who will be reading for us and with us. If you'd like any information, please stay tuned via our Facebook page, Monterey Bay Poetry Consortium. And there you will find a link to our YouTube channel, Monterey Bay Poetry Consortium YouTube. If you'd like to talk to John Lowy, please direct messenger me, and I can give you his phone number, although most of you probably have at least John's email address, if not his phone number. So I want to thank you all very much again. Wish you a warm and happy holiday time as things hopefully settle down in our world a little bit, with the vaccine starting to roll out, with perhaps a touch of normalcy that I keep on my nightstand of hope, returning to our country and to our world. Thank heavens for the blessed rain we've got here. Thank you for your company. And please have a wonderful and safe holiday time. Stay safe, wear your masks, and we'll see you in January. Thanks again. Bye-bye.
Thank you. Thank you.